Aquilo, Season 5, Chapter 8, Every One a Hunter. Would it surprise you to know that, for a while, I took a profound interest in mycology? I can't help it. Sometimes I'll come across a recipe, and in that recipe will be an ingredient that captures my imagination. Curiosity will grip my mind, and from that point on, I'll be off to the races. It's how I got into Indian cuisine and why I went on this whole French baking binge last summer. Bring me a bottle of Italian truffle oil, and there'll be pasta hanging like garlands all over the kitchen for a week. Cheese from Savoie will make me fall into a rabbit hole of raclette. Mother forbid anyone gifts me a decent sushi knife. We'll all die of mercury poisoning before I'm done. During my first year of cooking school, we were given a fairly simple assignment. Spaghetti ai funghi, pasta with mushrooms. The twist is we had to make our own noodles, but we could choose from any other ingredients provided by the school's kitchen. While everyone gravitated toward the portobellos and shiitakes, my classmates gave wide berth to the distinctive morel. I get it. To our young, mostly sedentary minds, the oddly textured mushroom held no appeal. To some, the brain-like spongy texture is a trigger for trypophobia. To others, it's the technical question of how well they would cook. To top it off, while there were plenty of chanterelles and oyster mushrooms, only a handful of morel were available to us. Barely enough for one student. I later learned that morels are mostly hand-farmed and that these were leftovers from a banquet prepared by the last year students. The dish was a sensation, and while we only got to sample a bite or two of each, it cemented my reputation as one of the class's most promising pupils. Even Chef Gagnon had little to say about my composition. The pasta was perfect, and the morels gave the meal a meaty texture that others lacked. The handful of white buttons I tossed in brought back a hint of mushroomy flavor to bring it all together. The only comment was some nonsense about the balance of wine to garlic. In the end, I got away with a rare A for the assignment, and I believe the first and last compliment from Gagnon. Some might say that the acclaim from my peers is what made my teacher's perception of me shift from student to rival. In a way, maybe the spaghetti ai funghi became the source of my problems with Chef Gagnon, but if not the pasta, it would have been something else. What matters is how, for the following 2 weeks, I was entranced by mushrooms. With this level of obsession comes a subtle appreciation for the less noticeable details. One aspect in particular that held a morbid fascination to me was how one could sauté morels in garlic butter and create the most delicious of dishes, but the otherwise innocuous web cap will instead cause illness that could lead to kidney failure and even death. Unlike the fly agaric, which warns of its toxicity with a bright red, a lot of the most dangerous mushrooms look just as inoffensive and delicious as their edible counterparts. It's a lesson best learned in textbooks rather than at the dinner table. This is what I think of when I look at Inquisitor Francisco. Though I may have been apprehensive of the 2 resident inquisitors in Aquilo, I've grown to know them as relatively harmless. Traumatic as their trashing of my cafe might have been, they have since displayed a cautious distance. I have no doubt that their regular visits to the Aquilo is part of their monitoring of the local witch, but it has also afforded me the opportunity to domesticate the duo. The same cannot be said of this new inquisitor. He's smooth and sly, a fox adopting the mannerism of a dog, the better to approach the chicken coop. The way he talks doesn't lack for the assurance his colleagues put on display, but without the bumbling arrogance of Orleans, or the sanguine righteousness of Alessandria. Instead, it's a condescending confidence that guides his every gesture and word. Each of his steps is firm, sure in the knowledge that the ground underneath is solid. I've yet to decide if this is based on faith alone, or if smug zealotry plays a role. Is he of the edible or toxic variety of mushrooms? I need to decide quickly before I'm forced to take a bite. Ah, he sighs, closing his eyes to better appreciate the sip of espresso he just took. Do you know, Miss Dufour, why I chose demonology as my preferred branch of study? I shake my head, smelling my own mug of coffee. This could be a long, difficult night. Caffeine? Hold my hand. Because demons aren't real, he says, letting that last word hang for a while. To most people, they aren't. Or when they are, it's always in the form of a possession, which is, I'm sure you know, the work of exorcists. This means that, for the most part, I get to wander the halls of the Vatican or visit the Malatesta Novello, always studying and learning, seldom, if ever, called into service. I'm allowed to remain in Italia, or not too far, and so never out of reach of a fine cup of espresso. I've never been, I say, stepping onto the minefield. But as a cook, I think it's my obligation to one day visit. Oh, you must, but not for the coffee. He leans forward and I raise an eyebrow, curious. This never leaves this place, but, he whispers, this coffee is as good as anything you'll find in Italy. I smile and stifle a laugh. I think you're exaggerating, but thank you. He's buttering me up. I can feel it. I look at the cruciform cufflinks on his wrists and the thick leather briefcase on the seat next to him. The last I saw a briefcase like that, it was Orleans, and it contained a mean-looking firearm, the kind of weapon used to eliminate witches. What kind of hardware does a demon hunter carry with him? Don't mistake my meaning, he continues. The compliment is very much pointed in your direction, but I have to acknowledge the machine. Ah, yes, the coffee machine. I sometimes wonder how many of my customers realize that this isn't just some decorative contraption, adorned with superfluous pipes and dials, just for show. Rather, it's the closest thing to an alchemical apparatus as I could conjure in my mind's eye. But Francisco seems to recognize it for what it is. They don't make them like that anymore, he says, sipping from his cup again. Do they? His gaze wanders from the machine to the pastry display, finding it emptied for the night. I would bet, he continues, it is an unforgiving thing, this machine, isn't it? It knows what its purpose is and fulfills it flawlessly. Anything that would stand in its way, anyone that would pretend to impose a will upon it, and psh, it burns. I look at my own hands. Burn scars from carelessly opening the oven door mark my wrists, and spots where boiling grease touched my skin speckle my hands. But it's the red blotches, raw and fresh, that remind me of my constant battles with the coffee machine. What does this inquisitor know of my struggles? Why does he talk like he has ways to overcome them? I am very much like the coffee machine, he says, focusing his eyes on the little ceramic cup in his hands. And in a way, very much like the demons I hunt. All of us, we are instruments of our singular purpose. The machine finds satisfaction in doing what it was built to do. The demons find peace perpetrating the vile acts that reflect their nature. And I... He looks up and into my eyes, a reader picking up a sentence mid-paragraph, and sips again from his tiny cup. I find grace in ridding the world of those things most unholy. Crow's feet above his cheeks and white teeth between his lips convey the satisfaction of a wolf who has cornered a deer. I can't be sure, in the moment, if I'm just a bystander in this terrible hunt, or if I'm meant to be the prey. You should have come during the day, I explain, stepping further into dangerous territory. You could have sampled more of what gives me purpose. Smile broadening, Francisco takes a long look around the dining room. His attention lingers on the coffee grinder, the collection of spoons, and on the logo of the Aquilo printed upon my apron. It's unsettling how much more comfortable he looks at my counter than I feel standing behind it. It's like he owns the place, not I. or at the very least, feels at home here. The cooking or the witchcraft? I startle. Not much, little more than a subtle widening of my eyes and perhaps a twitch of my neck. I knew this was coming, but while I talk about the witchcraft with my friends, and it has become a ubiquitous part of my life, it remains bizarre coming from the mouth of strangers. I assume anyone who comes to my cafe does so for the cooking. He smiles and he nods, but does so slowly, sure that I see the deliberate gesture. That is fair enough, he says. But you are the one who requested a demon hunter, and unlike my colleagues, I do not have a laissez-faire attitude toward my duties. Inquisitor Francisco leans forward again, casting a shadow over his precious cup of espresso and baring his teeth in a half-smile, half-snarl. So, Miss Dufour, he says as I back away half a step, where is the demon? The demon is dead. I expect disappointment from Francisco. After all, I've just taken from him the very reason for his presence in Aquilo. Moreover, my answer would deny him the pleasure of fulfilling his sacred duty. Zealots are nothing new to me. In a way, I'm one myself. My faith is the oven, and my church is the kitchen. I worship at the altar of flavor where I make sacrifices of sauces and marinades. I evangelize my beliefs through offerings of tarts and cupcakes to a congregation of gourmands. More common varieties of believers are also familiar. Orleans and Alessandria are some, but so are Ian and his Pilvists. In myself, and in almost every one of those I've met, I've seen the potential for great beauty in faith. From the gorgeous and delicious pies I bake to the calm and serenity of Ian's cloud worshippers, there's something to love in powerful beliefs made manifest. But also, there are terrible things to fear. Oh, Francisco wonders aloud. His curiosity seems insincere, however, forced for the sake of pursuing his inquiry. Well then, who killed it? And so I step onto my first mine. I can't answer Agnes. This would lead to questions about who Agnes is, how she managed to kill a demon, her nature, and inevitably her whereabouts. I don't know. A naked lie, offered with little conviction and even less talent for duplicity. The twitch at the corner of his lips serves as silent confirmation that he sees right through it, yet chooses to humor me. Isn't that unfortunate, he says, disappointed. I was hoping that this hunt would be easy. Come in, get some help from the locals, then enjoy a few weeks' vacation amidst the local color. Well, a little legwork will do me good, I suppose. Shake off the old cobwebs and flex my investigative muscles. After all, who knows what else I may discover as I work? He takes a final swig of his espresso, polishing off the drink before setting down the cup with care. Meanwhile, I stare him down, hesitant to speak further lest I step on another mine. This was delicious, he adds, standing up. The only thing it lacks is a decent biscotti. Do you make biscotti, Miss Dufour? I don't even bother shaking my head. The fake warmth and imposed familiarity grate on my nerves, but I feel cornered in my own establishment. I can't shake the feeling that if I open my mouth, it'll only serve to insert my foot further down my throat. Compared to when I first came to Aquilo, I know so much more about the small town, and every word I say could reveal someone else's secret. You should, Francisco says, picking up his briefcase. A biscotti really brings a good coffee to life. I take his cup and saucer as I watch the Inquisitor walk toward the door. A sigh of relief rests in my throat, ready to come forth the moment he passes the threshold. Still, he lingers, turning around and tapping his temple with the tip of his index. You know, he says, as if he just remembered something important. I forgot to ask you a question while I'm here. Call it academic inquiry. completely off the record. What? I'm quick to ask because the faster he gets his answer, the faster he's out of my cafe. Do you know how Orleans and Alessandria justify not doing their job? I think you'll find it interesting because it's quite the clever loophole they've found for you. See, there are many definitions of a witch, and it is entirely up to the investigating inquisitor to run with the one they deem appropriate for the situation. In this case, they, especially Orleans, are leaning very hard on how a witch is traditionally one who consorts with demons. It's a good thing, Miss Dufour, that all you do is dabble in a little kitchen magic. A little sage here, some salt circles there, but none of it dealing with infernal forces. I swallowed down my sigh and the relief it was meant to express. The palm of my hand aches as my fingers crush the espresso cup into it. In stronger hands, it would have shattered. Francisco casts a knowing look at the collection of spoons above the register, allowing his smile to push his cheekbones high, summoning those crow's feet of his. A very good thing indeed. I couldn't sleep. By the time I got upstairs again, Eric was already half asleep in front of the television. It's an old tube without cable and without any streaming services attached. I can't imagine what he thought he could watch, but he clearly gave up, opting for his phone instead. The sound of some popular internet song screeches out from his hand, the soundtrack to some influencer's silly viral dance, no doubt. His obvious exhaustion didn't stop him from polishing off 2 chicken wraps and half a stale brownie, but after that he fell unconscious with haste, leaving me to stir my thoughts over and over throughout the night. I couldn't reach Agnes if I wanted to. Once in a blue moon, I'll get a postcard or a letter. When there's a return address, it's that of a hotel and never the same twice. The itch to talk to her, to warn her, and perhaps even seek her counsel burns hot in my chest. Anxiety and fear stir my insides in what feels like crippling heartburn. The ceaseless rumination of Francisco's threat and the presence of yet another demon in Aquilo churn from the moment I lie in bed to the minute my alarm tries to wake me. Against all odds, my body took me down to the Aquilo, despite my mind still lingering under the bed sheets. Even with copious amounts of coffee in my system, hours passed before I could shake off the state of automation and become a full person once more. Now, as awareness returns, I'm thankful for having done all the baking and cooking last night. What I'm less thankful for is the visitor and his veiled threat. I scan the tables, curious to see if, amongst the familiar faces, there's anyone I should worry about. One group of Pilvists are enjoying tea near the window, their white robes glowing in the filtered sun. Michael, his overalls stained in pink and baby blue paint, is picking croissant crumbs from his mustache. In the back, Detective Lamore is poring over a file. My eyes aren't quite good enough to see that far, but somehow I doubt he's been saddled with the missing animal cases. All is well in the Aquilo, allowing me to rest easy and focus on my job. No, not that of serving drinks and food. I can still do that automatically, the habit of it having turned into mindless ease. Rather, I let my mind wander as to how I can best handle the new challenges in front of me. Starting with the hellhound, I already plan on going back to the forest, armed with a box of salt. I hope to trap the monster. If I can keep it caged somehow, it will no longer prey on the animals of Aquilo, and I can endeavor to find a way to rehabilitate it. Perhaps I can do as Doris did with the hunger demon and feed it something that will soothe the wrath burning hot within the creature. A smidge of self-satisfaction manages to manifest in my tired heart at finding solutions that, while risky, all seem feasible. How far have I come as a witch of Aquilo that I can now confidently plot a recipe that could quell a demon's anger? I look around the counter, hoping to find Olivia Figg. I want to brag to her about this, to hear her approval, and maybe have her tell me that Doris would be proud. But Olivia is nowhere to be seen. Neither is Gulliver or even Helen Edna. I'd have settled for Annabelle, though I suspect she would still disapprove of my plans, but even she's missing. In a full cafe, I realize that for the first morning in a long while, I'm suspiciously alone. Even Eric hasn't come down to get a free meal or help out. I guess you're my only friend, I tell the coffee machine as I pull down the lever in order to froth some milk. Maybe if you had legs. The accusation doesn't go unpunished. Carelessness, or something more nefarious, makes my hand slip and the back of my right hand brushes against a scalding pipe, adding another red mark to my skin. God, why? The wrath builds inside me, as hot as the steam bubbling up from the milk, but I catch myself. Why, indeed? Didn't Francisco hand me the answer to that on a silver platter? The machine, like him, doesn't like to be pressed into a particular function. It knows how to make coffee. That's the beast's entire purpose. Maybe that's why it spares the hands of those who have no pretense of knowing how to make a good cup. The machine, allowed to ply its skills while in the hands of amateurs, feels no need to punish them. Wouldn't that be something? I shake my head, dismissing the amusing thought. The haze of exhaustion is making me anthropomorphize my appliances now. Miss Dufour, a voice calls from the register. The tone is friendly and enthusiastic, dismissing the list of less pleasant names who might call out to me this way. Mr. Mitchell, I say, finishing up the latte I've been preparing. What a pleasant surprise. It's no exaggeration. Horace Mitchell seldom drops by the Aquilo Cafe and, in fact, rarely sets foot in the modest downtown area. I don't even have a usual to serve him, so infrequent are his visits. What brings you to Rue Principale? A hot coffee, perhaps? With everything going on, it's difficult to remember that only a few days ago was Meredith Mitchell's funeral. Those who know and pay attention, however, can notice the pink outline of Horace's eyes and raw skin under his nose. There's a slight tremor to his actions, as if the pressure of his emotions was barely kept in check. I was in town getting some supplies, and I thought I should take the opportunity to drop this off. The old man reaches inside the pockets of his denim vest, pulling out a clean but crumpled up envelope. He taps it on the counter before sliding it in my direction. I give another customer their latte before taking the envelope. M. Dufour is written in thick marker on the flat side, and I can see through the thin paper that it contains a check. Payment for the catering, Horace says. You'll notice a generous tip, but don't worry about it. There were so many leftovers that I probably won't need to do groceries for a week. I carefully clean the steam nozzle of the coffee machine and frown. If you're not doing groceries, what supplies are you getting then? Dog food, I'm afraid, and cat food, and litter. Ah, yes, I think. The menagerie. I don't suspect feeding his pets my mini quiche would be the best of ideas. Indeed, even the generous leftovers from the wake would get obliterated by the army of animals under Horace Mitchell's care. That being said, didn't he have a garage absolutely brimming with supplies? Food, litter, medicine, toys, bedding. There was so much in there the old man could have opened his own pet store. Did he really go through all of it that fast? Well, I say, patting his hand, I'm sure whatever you added is too much regardless. I slip the envelope into the register underneath the cash drawer. I'll have to enter it in the books before I take it to the bank, but that's fine. Despite hating it, I've become somewhat adequate at the paperwork and bookkeeping for the Aquilo. Oh, I say, reminded of something. I've been meaning to ask Mr. Mitchell. Have you noticed all the missing pets around town? For a second, Horace doesn't look like he understands the question. Both his hands find one another and he pulls at his knuckles in nervous confusion. His pale eyes dart around the counter as if he'd find significance written along with today's specials. No, he says. I haven't really paid attention to that sort of thing. What with Meredith's passing and all. I'm so sorry, I interrupt, eager to keep him from spiraling further. I didn't mean to stir anything up. Oh, no, not at all. It's just the animals have been so good to me since she's been gone. They've kept me so busy and in such good company. I haven't really had time to notice anything going on around town. People's pets are disappearing, you say? I nod, closing the cash drawer and casting a glance at the door, making sure no other customers are waiting. There's a ton of missing animal posters around town. They even have a detective looking into it on the other side of the border. Oh my! I just thought, with all your pets, that you might want to keep an eye open. I'd hate to see you suffer another loss. Horace smiles and tilts his head, genuine gratitude brimming from his expression. Thank you so much, Miss Dufour, he says. But you have no need to worry. None of my darlings leave the house. I'll sometimes take some of the bigger dogs for a walk to the park, but otherwise the whole family are indoor pets. Well, that's good, but be careful on those walks. Odessa Ellison's dog was taken from its leash as she was taking it out a few nights ago. I think of little Puffin, a lump in my throat, for the first time putting together what likely happened to him. Images of the demon dog, wounded and, I expect, hungry, flash through my mind. Yes, those would be the kind of teeth that might slice through nylon like a knife. Poor little guy. Oh my, Horace interrupts my own spiral. That's terrible. Such a sweet little corgi. I hope she finds him. Unlikely, I think, but I keep the dark musing to myself. So do I. A brief, awkward silence falls between us. Two people with precious little to talk about having exhausted all subjects. Well, Horace says, I better start making my way home. Delivery man's going to be there soon, and I need to open the garage for him to unload. Right. Well, thank you for dropping by. Say hi to your snails? He offers a friendly laugh at my poor attempt at humor before turning to leave. His arm waves a tired farewell as he steps out. I'm glad for the heartwarming exchange. A true moment of respite in the middle of this 5-course meal of worry and fear. But of course, nothing lasts. Just as one good man leaves, it has to be while holding the door to a far less desirable creature. Certainty that the next minutes will be frustrating leads to acceptance of the situation. There's nothing to be done about it. Steeling myself with every ounce of patience I can muster, I start gathering the ingredients I need to put together a chai latte. Maybe, I wonder, looking over the dining room, there won't be enough room for her to set up shop? Alas, there are plenty of empty tables. And judging by the size of her knitting bag, Ophelia is going to be spending a painful amount of time here. Atop her habitual serving of condescension, her demeanor is peppered with a generous amount of concern. Brow knit tight and eyes shifting around the cafe absolve me as the source of her worry. Yet that offers no immunity from her barbs. You look like something William threw up, Miriam. No hello, not even a nod in my direction. If it weren't for how traditional her half-veiled insults and passive-aggressive jabs have become, I might have missed she was even talking to me. She serves her venom as I serve my customers their usual. And in a way, it has a similar, though opposite, effect. While I prepare green tea for Alessandria or a sandwich for Patrick to deconstruct, it sets a tone for our interaction. It's a wordless way of establishing rapport. Ophelia does that too, but the connection is like tar. Sticky, unpleasant, and foul-smelling. Good morning to you too, I mumble, finishing up the latte I know she'll be ordering. I'll have a croissant, she demands. Seriously, though, do you ever sleep? I take one of the last 2 croissants from the display and slide it on a plate with a napkin, biting my lip all the while to contain my annoyance. I don't believe that's any of your business, I answer, handing the plate over. Her concern lifts for a second, allowing her eyebrows to rise in smug arrogance. Touché. As long as you're not spending your nights hunting demons, it is none of my business. Something snaps. I pull the plate back before her fingers can find purchase on it. Ophelia ordering me around or offering unsolicited advice is nothing new. The very first time we even met, she was telling me how I should redecorate my coffee shop. And while I'll admit not all her ideas were bad, in fact, I've adopted a few, though I'd rather die than admit it, the way they were delivered spoke of toxic self-importance. There is, however, an ocean of difference between home decor recommendations and attempts to wall me away from my duties as one of the Dufour witches. No, I state, as firm as a boot hitting the pavement. What I do is none of your business. No exception. I think I've made my point crystal clear, that I've wiped away any room for misinterpretation. There are no ifs or buts allowed, and certainly no questions to wedge between my words and my tone. I am adamant. Except Ophelia does something I've never seen her do before. It's not spectacular, nor is it intimidating. In any other context, it might even be humorous, but for the first time, I see her lose her temper. "Listen, you little amateur," she spits. "I am trying to do you a favor. Whatever stupid plan you're hatching, I'm trying to save you from it." Her face, like a little earthquake, trembles with fury. She sweeps her arm over the dining room, going far enough back to encompass the street beyond the window. "I'm trying to save all of them from you. So how about you listen to me for once, step back, and stay in your lane? In fact, you know what? You owe me. You owe me for last fall, for that scarf I made you. Remember that?" I nod, taken a little aback by her furious rant. "I'm calling in the favor." Her tone is almost a screech at this point, and even William the cat, poking his head from her bag, seems worried at what he's witnessing. "You bake your little cookies and make your little pies, and you let the adults handle things this time." She stares me down for a few seconds, looking for fear, I suppose, or at least some sort of agreement to her terms, but finding neither. Instead, I push the plate with the croissant forward again, straighten my back, and square my shoulders. "That'll be $8.75. She damn near explodes. The veins in her neck bulge and her skin takes on a deep red shade. I wonder, for a moment, if I'm going to have to call the paramedics, but before she can have a full-blown stroke, Ophelia turns on her heels and walks out of the cafe. The door to the Aquilo can't slam, but the chimes get brutalized by how brisk her exit is. I want to be satisfied with these results. Even though it cost me a chai latte, I've finally managed to rile Ophelia up as much as she does me. Instead, a cold reality washes over me. This rivalry is something I've treated like a childish spat between high school students. Never did I consider I could be making a real adversary out of her. Something more than a competitor. An enemy, and one who just happens to be a far more competent witch than I am. For the first time, I'm not annoyed by Ophelia. I'm a little afraid of her. Aquilo is written by J.F. Dubeau and narrated and produced by me, Amy Frost. If you enjoyed this podcast and would like to hear more, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast platform. Want to support the show? Buy us a coffee. Go to ko-fi.com/Aquilo to donate. Aquilo has a Patreon. Visit patreon.com/Aquilo for details. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram under the username Aquilo.